When the Mongol horde finally broke into Baghdad, they didn't just seek to conquer a city. They enacted a meticulously cruel script of humiliation upon the royal family, designed to shatter a civilization's soul. The date is February 10th, 1258. A strange quiet has fallen over the House of Wisdom. The scholars' usual murmur of debate is absent. In the Caliph's palace, the intricate network of courtyard fountains, a marvel of hydraulic engineering and a symbol of life, has run dry. This silence is the first true warning. For in Baghdad, the peerless capital of the Abbasid Caliphate, the ceaseless flow of water was as certain as the passage of the stars. Its absence speaks of a siege tightening its fatal grip. Look beyond the mighty, now crumbling walls. The horizon is a shifting, dark mass. It is the Mongol army under Hulagu Khan, a grandson of Genghis. This is not merely an army. It is a migratory force of destruction, comprising perhaps 150,000 warriors, accompanied by their families, herds, and a traveling city of tents. They have crossed mountains and deserts, leaving a chain of smoldering cities behind them as proof of their doctrine: total submission or total erasure. Baghdad, the glittering jewel of Islam, the storehouse of the world's knowledge, is their ultimate prize. And they intend to make an example of it that will echo for 1,000 years. The siege is a masterclass in psychological and military pressure. The Mongols do not merely surround, they demonstrate. Using captured prisoners as forced labor, they construct siege works with terrifying efficiency. Chinese engineers in their employ build catapults capable of hurling not just stone, but incendiary projectiles and primitive explosives over the walls. The sky rains fire. The defenders' morale cracks like the city's ancient mortar. When a breach is finally forced, the Mongols pour in not as a riotous mob, but in disciplined units. Their goal is not immediate plunder, but first, the very heart of Abbasid power. This is where our story turns from a military conquest to a chillingly personal ritual of annihilation. Today, we will descend into the heart of that ritual. We will stand in the throne room with the last Caliph, al-Musta'sim. We will witness, through the fragmented accounts of those who survived to whisper the tale, the calculated destruction of his family. This is not a story of a battle lost, but of a world purposefully unmade. We will explore the cultural chasm between steppe nomad and urban sophisticate, and how that chasm bred a cruelty so specific it was meant to rewrite history itself. What is the most effective way to kill an idea? You destroy its symbols. To comprehend the magnitude of what unfolds, we must first meet the protagonist of this tragedy, Caliph al-Musta'sim. He is not a warrior king. He is the 37th link in a chain of rule stretching back to 750 AD. His authority is spiritual, political, and in the minds of his subjects, cosmic. As the commander of the faithful, he is considered the successor to the Prophet Muhammad, God's deputy on earth. But generations of insulated power have bred a fatal decay. His court is a web of flatterers. His treasury, while vast, is better at accumulating wealth than funding armies. He engages in petty political squabbles with neighboring Muslim powers, blind to the existential storm gathering in the east. When Hulagu's envoys deliver their demand for surrender, the Caliph's response is a mixture of incredulity and divine assurance. He reportedly tells his council, "The armies of Islam are countless, and God will not allow the seat of the caliphate to be defiled." It is the arrogance of a man who believes his title is a suit of armor. He could not be more wrong. Hulagu Khan is the product of a different universe. In the Mongol ethos, sovereignty was earned through demonstrable power, will, and the mandate of the eternal blue sky, a mandate confirmed by victory, not by ancient bloodlines. To Hulagu, the Caliph is not a holy figure. He is a hypocrite, a man who hoards gold while his military atrophies, who claims divine favor yet cannot defend his own walls. This makes him not just an enemy, but a fraud deserving of a corrective lesson. The Mongols viewed such settled rulers with a blend of contempt and curiosity. Their conquest was, in part, a brutal audit of civilization's claims. Baghdad, for all its books and philosophers, failed the audit on the only metric that mattered to the steppe: strength. The city's fall is swift after the walls are breached. Resistance in the streets is brutally crushed. Then, Hulagu sets the stage for his primary objective. The Caliph, along with his immediate family and key courtiers, is taken captive not in a dungeon, but in his own palace. The throne room, once a space of awe and protocol, is now a courtroom for a conqueror. Al-Musta'sim is brought before Hulagu. The symbolism is stark. The man who bowed to no one, now made to kneel. His turban, the ultimate symbol of his office, is removed. The crown of the faithful, tossed to the marble like common cloth. What happens next is documented by historians like Rashid al-Din, who had access to Mongol records, and by the Persian scholar Juvayni. The encounter is cold, deliberate. Hulagu allegedly confronts the Caliph with his arrogance. "You claimed the armies of the world would rally to you," he may have said. "Where are they?" He then confronts him with his wealth. "You called upon your treasures to save you. Let us see their worth now." And here the psychological theater begins. The Mongols order the caliphal treasury brought forth. Chests of gold dinars, sacks of silver dirhams, goblets crusted with jewels, the accumulated tribute of centuries, are dumped onto the floor in a shining, chaotic heap. Then they command al-Musta'sim to eat it. This is not a random act of cruelty. It is a savage metaphor. He is forced to literally consume the material wealth he prized, to ingest the very substance of his failed worldly power. Guards force coins into his mouth. The physical agony is immense, the grinding of metal on teeth, the choking, the visceral rebellion of the body. But the symbolic message is clearer. Your God is gold, and it will not save you. But this torment of the Father is merely the prelude. The main act requires witnesses from his own blood, an audience of his deepest affections. His children are brought in. The Caliph must now watch as the Mongol machine dismantles his lineage, each member treated according to a grim taxonomy of punishment. How does a conqueror exterminate a future? He attacks it generationally. First, his eldest daughter. In some accounts, she is named Fatima. She is celebrated not just for her birth, but for her intellect, a poet, a student of philosophy. In a society that placed immense value on female honor and seclusion, her violation is designed to be maximally devastating. Sources, including later compilations from Arab chroniclers and the echoes in travelogues like those of the Polo family, describe a scene of orchestrated sexual violence performed before the Caliph and his surviving sons. It is a weapon aimed not just at her body, but at the very honor of the dynasty. She is killed in the process, her body treated as refuse. The message, even the most sacred, protected elements of your order, are now commodities to be spent. Next, the sons. The Caliph had 3. Mongol custom, rooted in taboo, forbade the shedding of royal blood upon the earth. To avoid this, they employed a method of execution both pragmatic and horrifyingly intimate. The princes, the eldest a young man, the youngest barely adolescent, were tightly swaddled in heavy, woven carpets. Their struggles were muffled, their forms rendered anonymous within the thick fabric. Then, Mongol riders on their sturdy steppe ponies would ride circles over the bundled rugs, trampling them until all movement and sound ceased. The historians note the absence of blood and the peculiar, crushing sounds. For the Caliph, forced to watch, it was the annihilation of his legacy in slow, thudding increments. His heirs were not executed. They were nullified, transformed into broken, breathless things inside a domestic object. For the remaining daughters, fate took different paths. The 2 eldest were likely distributed as high-value war prizes to Hulagu's top generals, Subutai or Kitbuka. They would vanish into the vast Mongol Empire, forced into marriages or concubinage, their identities dissolving into the culture of the victors. Their stories end in the historical silence of the steppe. But the youngest daughter, a child named perhaps Aisha, was kept by Hulagu himself. Her fate was perhaps the most psychologically complex. She was not killed, nor simply given away. She was adopted in a sense, forced to abandon her language, her religion, her dress, and her name. She was to be remade as a Mongol, a living, walking symbol of the Abbasid line's complete submission and absorption. She was to be the ghost of her family, kept alive to prove it was dead. Fragmentary tales surfaced decades later of an aging woman in Tabriz or elsewhere, remembered as the last daughter of the Caliph, a figure of profound melancholy. Her long life was the final, lingering note of the dynasty's requiem. Finally, it was the Caliph's turn. His execution, days after his capture, was staged with a deliberate, mocking ceremonialism. Wrapped in a carpet, the same method as his sons, he was not trampled. Instead, the Mongols erected a wooden banquet platform directly over him. Hulagu and his commanders then held a lavish feast above the suffocating ruler. They ate, drank, laughed, and celebrated their victory, while the man who embodied Islamic political authority for 500 million people slowly died of thirst and asphyxiation beneath their feet. The chronicler Rashid al-Din states simply that they let him die. His death was not an event, but a process, a background hum to a party. The Abbasid Caliphate, which had weathered invasions, schisms, and rebellions for half a millennium, expired in darkness, to the sound of clinking cups and conquerors' jokes. The throne of God's shadow on earth, extinguished under a dinner table. Yet the horror was not confined to the palace. Having made their symbolic point, the Mongols unleashed a systematic, city-wide slaughter. 4 days, perhaps a full week, killing squads moved through Baghdad. Modern historians, cross-referencing sources, estimate the dead numbered between 200,000 and 1 million. The Tigris River, it was said, ran red with blood, then black with the ink of countless manuscripts thrown from the House of Wisdom. This was not frenzied looting, it was policy. The goal was depopulation and terror. The House of Wisdom, the legendary library, was burned to the ground. Its collection, Greek philosophy, Persian astronomy, Indian mathematics, Arab medicine, was incinerated or cast into the waters. The loss to human knowledge is incalculable. A dark age manufactured in a matter of days. A surviving scholar, Ibn al-Fawadi, who hid in a well and later wrote a biographical dictionary of the law scholars, described a city of corpses, where packs of dogs grew fat and the stench hung for miles. Baghdad, the navel of the world, was now a charnel house. The Mongol objective was achieved. They had not just defeated an enemy, they had created a monument to fear. Is the destruction of knowledge a greater crime than the destruction of lives? The aftermath rippled across the Islamic world and beyond. The psychological shock was paralyzing. The institution of the Caliphate, already weakened, was now spiritually decapitated. While a puppet Abbasid line was later established in Cairo, its authority was a pale shadow. The center of Islamic intellectual and political gravity shifted decisively to Egypt and Syria. The event bred a new, harder realism in Muslim states. Fortifications grew stronger, armies became more professional, diplomacy, with overwhelming powers, more nuanced. Paradoxically, the Mongols themselves, within a few generations, converted to Islam and became patrons of the very culture they had sought to erase. But the memory of 1258 never faded. It became the archetypal, if this can happen to Baghdad, cautionary tale. In the grand scope of history, the fall of Baghdad stands as a brutal case study in civilizational fragility. Al-Musta'sim's fatal error was a category error. He believed in the transcendent power of an idea, the caliphate, in a moment that demanded concrete, military power. He mistook spiritual reverence for physical security. Hulagu, a product of the meritocratic, ruthless steppe, dealt only in the currency of tangible force. The collision resulted in a catastrophe of almost biblical proportions. The silent fountains were the first clue, a complex system, reliant on delicate engineering and constant maintenance, had failed. It was a metaphor for the entire Abbasid edifice. We excavate this painful history not to dwell in grimness, but to understand the mechanics of collapse. It reminds us that walls, wealth, and even wisdom are insufficient without the will and capability to defend them. It warns against the arrogance that isolates power from reality. The echo of Baghdad's fall is a whisper across centuries. No civilization, however brilliant, is permanent. Its survival depends not on past glory, but on present vigilance, adaptability, and a clear-eyed view of the horizons beyond its walls. The Mongols did not just conquer a city. They exposed vulnerability in the very model of sedentary, ideological power. That lesson, written in fire and blood, is their enduring, dark legacy. If this journey into a pivotal moment of historical fracture held meaning for you, please give this video a like. It provides essential support for winds of thought as we continue to unearth the profound narratives that shaped our world.